Hi everyone, my name is Nicole and I'm with SLO Library. I'm here to introduce you to our Zoom webinar we had with author Michael Tyler and artist David Lee Cisco for their book, The Skin You Live In. This was brought possible by Zoobean, Bibliolabs, and the Indie Author Project. Without further ado, here you go.
And an incredible fashionista on top of that. But David and I are delighted to be here and share this opportunity for us to speak to you and others about what we consider to be a book we have a tremendous amount of pride for, a book that we think is helping in the conversations that we need to have out here that so many people find so difficult to have because we are trying to promote the message of acceptance to as many people as possible. And David and I got together on this book because I wrote it in response to a situation that happened with my son, a situation that a lot of parents are finding more and more that they have to sit down at an earlier age and begin to have with their children about what it means to have a society that may disparage you or treat you harshly because you're different than everyone else. And I wrote that book initially, as I said, because it was a response to a situation my son had. And pursuing it as a book, I want all the children out here to listen to this one part, because many of you have read the story called The Little Engine That Could. And getting this book published was a lot like living the story of The Little Engine That Could, because this book got rejected 147 times over a 10-year period before it finally got published. And I just kept thinking, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, until it got done. And it got done because I went a non-traditional route. I didn't go to a publisher, finally. I went to the Chicago Children's Museum, Navy Pier, one of the greatest destination places in the city of Chicago, and asked them to publish the book, and they did. And so we had to find somebody to illustrate it. And fortunately, the person they brought on to do the art direction for the book, Peter Salozzi, was an individual who was very good friends with David. And when I mentioned to him the only person I could ever dream of doing this book was David Lee Cisco, and I didn't even know David at that time. I knew his artwork simply because he was part of an international exhibit in Chicago called Cows on Parade. And he happened to, as fate would have it, he happened to paint a cow that was right at the entrance of the park I took my son to every day. Talk about the child connection and how well his artwork served this. And when I mentioned David's name, Peter said David had been looking for a project like this, that was his friend. And that's how I got the very distinct privilege of working with David Lee Cisco and having his artwork become The Skin You Live In. And I don't think anyone else in the whole world could have done for this book and the words that I created what David Lee Cisco did. So I will always applaud David for that. Now, at this point, because I know that we are going to do a reading, and I don't know if David, if you want me to just do all of it, because I know you're trying to spare your throat. Yeah, we're going to get into some sign language with David in a moment. Poor man's got the sore throat. That's still my buddy, though. He speaks loudly with his talent. If there's anyone who wants to make a statement or ask a question before I go into a reading, please go ahead. Introduce yourselves or what have you. I'll give you a moment to think about that. Otherwise, I will go directly into reading The Skin You Live In.
There's a question. There's a question.
Where can we can see your message?
How did you get the book published?
I took the book to, it was quite a process. We took the book to the Chicago Children's Museum. Hopefully, if you ever get to Chicago, you'll go to the Chicago Children's Museum, because there's a giant Ferris wheel nearby. You get to see it. It's a fantastic place to go to. And we asked them to publish the book. And the Chicago Children's Museum had never published a book before. Never. Because children's museums don't usually publish books. But they believed in the project. They believed in the message. And they said that we will learn how to publish a book. We'll learn how to get it printed. Thankfully, David steered them on a lot of that. And that was how the book got published. So I thank you for your question. You have another one.
How long did it take you to write your book?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked that, because when my son first presented the problem that I wanted to talk to him about, I said that I had a lot of problems trying to explain this to him because he was only 5 years old at the time. I said, let me go get a children's book, because this is what parents and teachers do. And I'll read it to you, and then that'll help us start the conversation. And I couldn't find one. And I looked for 2 weeks for a children's book to read to him. I read 347 books in 2 weeks, and I didn't see a single one that I liked that I wanted to read my son. So I realized I had to write it myself. And so every day he would ask me, when am I going to read it to him? When am I going to have this conversation with him? So I was feeling the pressure to create it. And so one day I sat down and the phrase popped into my head: what do I want to tell my son about the skin he lives in? Because it really is just that simple. This is what skin is, and this is what skin isn't. And so I wrote down on a piece of paper, the skin you live in. And the moment I wrote that down, the words, after 2 weeks, just rolled through my head. And in less than 12 minutes, I had written the book. And that has never happened to me before, and it has never happened to me since. It just doesn't happen that way. I mean, authors sometimes have incredible moments of inspiration, but they don't go lightning flash in less than 12 minutes and you create something that lasts a lifetime. It was just a phenomenal moment of inspiration, but that's how long it took me to write the book. Thought about it for 2 weeks, wrote it in less than 12 minutes. All right, any more questions before I read? Okay then, I will go ahead and read The Skin You Live In. Hey, look at your skin. The wonderful skin you live in. The skin you're all day in, the skin that you play in, the skin that you snuggle up, cuddle up, lay in, the skin that you beam in, the skin that you scream in, the skin that you dream about eating ice cream in. The skin you have fun in, the skin that you run in, the skin that you hop, skip, and jump in the sun in. The skin you laugh in, the skin that you cry in, the skin that you look to the sky and ask why in. It's baby born new skin and your family too skin, and glows when it shows that it knows we love you skin. It's face the rain bold skin and snow angel cold skin, and warm again, let it in, sunshine cold skin. It's trembling fright skin and cringes at night skin, but turn off the lights to make birthday cake bright skin. It's whatever you do skin, be happy it's you skin. You can't live without it. I'm glad it's me too skin. And look at the shades it comes in, the shades of your colorful skin. Your coffee and cream skin, your warm cocoa dream skin, your chocolate chip, double dip, Sunday supreme skin, your marshmallow treat skin, your sponge sugar sweet skin, your cherry top, candy drop, frosting complete skin. Your pumpkin pie slice skin, your caramel corn nice skin, your toffee wrap, ginger snap, cinnamon spice skin, your butterscotch gold skin, your lemon tart bold skin, your mountain my apple pie, cookie dough, rolled skin. Now, look once again at your skin and the skin all people live in. It's not tall skin or short skin, or best in the sports skin, or fat skin or thin skin. You lose and I win skin. Nor sad skin or mad skin, you're naturally bad skin. I'm rich and you're poor, and you'll never have more skin. Again, it's not any of this. It's not dumb skin or smart skin or keep us apart skin or weak skin or strong skin. I'm right and you're wrong skin. Nor she skin or he skin. You're better than me skin. I'm lesser than you skin. It's me against you skin. It's not any of this, because you're more than you seem. You are all that you think and you hope and you dream. You're a gifted creation with imagination. You're a new day desire to reach even higher. You're the feelings that start from down deep in your heart. You're the pride and the joy inside each girl and boy. So, whenever you look at your beautiful skin, from your wiggling toes to your giggling grin, think how lucky you are that the skin you live in so beautifully holds the you who's within. And like flowers in the fields that make wonderful views, when we stand side by side in our wonderful hues, we all make a beauty so wonderfully true. We are special and different and just the same too. The end. Now, I hope you all enjoyed that, and I hope I did some service on the part of my friend David. I'm reading it. Now we open the floor for anybody with comments or questions who want to ask and talk to us about the skin you live in or the skin they live in. Sounds like Otto wants to get out of the discussion there.
Yes, he does. He does.
So anyone out there?
I have a question.
Sure.
How old is your son now?
My son now is 32. He was 5 years old when this first happened to him. He was called a name on the playground. And there I was trying to deal with him about this issue of discrimination and racism. It is an issue that adults have a lot of difficulty talking to each other about. If we didn't have that kind of difficulty, we might have ended it by now. So, and that adults have difficulty talking about it, imagine how difficult it is trying to have that conversation with a 5-year-old, which is the reason why I did what a lot of adults do when they're confronted with that kind of difficulty. We either say, go talk to the other parent, or we'll say, I'll go get a book. Because the one thing that moment taught me was that great fallacy of parental omnipotence. Us parents like to present to our children that we make their world comfortable and safe because we know everything, and we don't know everything. And that was a moment I had to face that. But because of that moment, I was able to create an answer for them. And that's the one thing that I would encourage all adults in the lives of children to think about, is something my mother told me right before I had my first child, was that I was going to have moments like this. And that when a child comes to you with a question or a comment about a subject that makes you uncomfortable or that you wish they were older when they came to you. The fact that they can think about it means they're ready to understand it, because they're already pondering what it is. They already have a curiosity about what it is, an inquisition about what it is. And so it's up to you in that moment to not delay it, to not dissuade it, but to reward it by figuring out some kind of way to respond to it, the answer to it, to explain it to them. And so because my mother had given me that instruction, that was my charge. My son had come to me with this issue. Somehow I was going to have to deal with it and explain it to him. And that's something that I would encourage all adults and educators and caregivers to do with children, is when they come to you with these difficult, sometimes uncomfortable questions and comments about difficult and uncomfortable issues, find a way in the moment to have that conversation. And then it won't be stigmatized in their mind. They'll come to an understanding about it. They will develop a principle about it. And that's how we'll have the environment of acceptance that we keep looking for, of inclusivity that we keep looking for. So I encourage you all to do that. I'm really thankful for that question.
Thank you, Michael. Delightful drawings. Thank you, David.
There's a very nice picture on the screen right now.
I see
By a
that.
child. That's so good. Nice work.
I'm trying to find that. I don't see that.
He's from SLO Library. And
Oh, I see. Got it. Right.
yeah.
That's fantastic. We have a young artist
One
in
more
this.
time.
Someone who
There
will
you
one
go.
day illustrate his own book. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you for showing us that.
Nice.
All right, we're ready for the next one. Anyone else?
That's
Lead the way.
awesome. Well, speaking of the self-portrait that the child just showed, whose idea was it to do the do-it-yourself book? It makes so much sense to have a book about the skin you live in, and then have, children themselves put themselves in a book and make it a community, like, free-for-all. That's amazing.
I think the best person to answer that is Emily. Emily, are you still with us?
Yeah, well, we reached out to Michael and David after, of course, the book being so wonderfully successful and all the activities that they've already done, and these kind of readings, challenging attendees and everything to do their own self-portrait and answer kind of thought-provoking questions. And so we just kind of decided to put that all together into one full book that anyone who attended today or views this recording, you can go to the link I just shared in the chat there, and answer a couple of questions about how the book impacted you. And if you'd like, you can upload a self-portrait that you've drawn as well, and we'll be able to put them all together into a little County of San Luis Obispo patrons book.
And I'm really grateful that this was done, because it's interactive. It allows for people who read the book and experience the book to begin to immediately take the message from the book and apply it. We have concepts and thoughts all the time, but until they become application, they're not the kind of knowledge that we can take out into the world, into our society, that changes our conduct so that we can change the world we live in. And so I'm really grateful for this project. And I think it's all the more fitting that the person who just explained it, last name is Gooding. So I'm really grateful for that. Now, next
Thank you.
person, anyone?
I actually had a question. So kind of backtracking to how your son, I think it was 3 years ago, because your son was 5 and he's 8 now.
No, my son was 5, he's 32 now.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
Well, then that just kind of goes to show what's my question. Do you feel the timeliness of it now, with DEI being questioned in schools and stuff like that? Like, it's the same issues. And so, do you feel it?
I really appreciate that question. I think it's a question that I'm grateful for, and at the same time, I feel a certain sadness about being asked. The sadness comes from the fact that it still has to be asked. I feel grateful for it because in that you're asking it and others are asking it, it gives me hope that there are people out there who really want to address it. And when I first wrote the book, it was in 1995. That's when my son was 5 years old. It didn't get published until 2005, because that was a 10-year journey to get it published. And I think that I can answer your question in part by explaining to you a situation I had with an editor who led me to pursue the Chicago Children's Museum. I received a phone call from an editor whose company had just rejected the book.
Oh.
Right. Now, for authors out there and would-be authors out there, they know that editors don't call people. When you get a call from an editor, that's like St. Peter giving you a call and saying, you're welcome. It's like that. It's that rare, okay? And so when I got the call from the editor, aside the fact that I was shocked, I was happy because I was thinking maybe they had reconsidered the rejection letter that I had just opened, okay? And the editor said to me that she knew I had submitted the manuscript and that it had been rejected because all those new manuscripts come to her first before she submits them to the editor who actually buys the manuscript for publishing. And that in 16 years of publishing, she had not read anything that was as written as well about this as the book that I wrote, which to me was some salve and ointment in the wounds of 147 rejections. And she said, so I'm going to tell you why it's not getting published. And so I immediately put down the phone. I got a pad and pen because I was going to take notes so that I could change the manuscript. And when I got back on the phone, the first thing she said to me is, don't change a word, which was puzzling to me because I was willing to go ahead and make the editorial changes. She said, the problem isn't what you wrote. The problem is who's reading it. She said, the editors and the publishers of the world, and here in America, don't come from a different society than you do. So the same reason why they can't see what you wrote is the same reason why police officers can't see what you wrote. And doctors and lawyers and judges and everyone else in America can't see what you wrote. So you have to take your book to an institution or an organization whose mission statement reflects what you wrote, because editors and publishers are not imported from an island of virtue. They come from the same America that you come from. And I tell you that story because that island of virtue has not become the oasis that America is. We still do not have that America. So when I wrote the book, even though I was writing it for my son, I wrote it thinking that I wanted to write something that would stand the test of time. That no matter what era you were in, if this problem was still present, this book could still help. And it was another reason why I was so enthusiastic about having David illustrate the book, because I think his illustrations are timeless. I think that in 100 years from now, if somebody looks at this book, they will still have the same joyful nursery school rhyme feeling about looking at David's illustrations as anyone in this generation has. Because the book's been out for almost 20 years and people still respond to it the same way. So yes, I do feel as though we're still addressing that issue. We've made some progress on it, but every time we make progress on it, there's an equal inflammation about the progress. So we have to constantly keep dealing with the equal inflammation about the progress. But I think most of us in this country want to see it progress further. I know certainly you and others who are here today want to see it progress further. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here today. Was there any number of things you can do on a Saturday afternoon? So I'm really grateful for the fact that you're all here. But I think that we have to just keep working on it. And we are making some progress. And one day we might live in a country where most of us are not inflamed by the fact that other people are different.
Yeah.
So thank you for asking that.
Thank you for your answer. It was really thoughtful. Kind of then switching gears about the creative process, how you've touched on working with the Chicago Children's Museum. What was that like for you and David? Since you never worked together before and this was the first book that they've done, how did that come together and the process of collaboration?
Well, first of all, because I'm dominating the conversation, if you want to utter anything, David, go right ahead.
Okay. Basically, when I read the text, I just thought that the story itself would give me the clues of what to draw. So when it talked about the skin that you dream in, eating ice cream in, it was just obvious. Just read the book and interpret it in a playful way, but ground it so that so that what he's saying makes sense. So it was really easy to draw a kid asleep dreaming of ice cream cones. It was very easy, and I just kind of went with that. For each page gave me the clue of what to draw. And then when there were times where the poetry was more abstract, I would just find a location I thought that would celebrate what those words were about. So like in one of the cases, the kids are at an aquarium looking at wonderful fish, or they're at, I actually tried to place it at different places kids would go to around Chicago. So the Nature Museum has a room you can walk, an open air room you can walk into and see all of these live butterflies that fly around you and maybe land on your fingers or on your head. And I just kind of kept trying to just make the images super playful and fun and heartwarming. And when they needed to be sad or somber, they were that way. Or if they were a quiet moment, I wanted to make it quiet. Same thing with one point when it goes to it's not Smart Skin. That was when the Harry Potter movies were first coming out. So I thought, well, what would it be if they were in a Harry Potter like library reading books? And that's what I did.
And David's explanation of that, you can understand why Ben said I was so happy to work with him. When David and I started collaborating on the book, because once the museum decided to undertake this as a project and raise the capital for it and seek out who was going to print it and take Peter's direction on how to do it, David and I got to meet finally. And I would go to his studio and he would show me renderings that he was creating. And it was one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever had as a creative, because there was no point in time when David and I were in conflict about the marriage between the message of the book and how it was going to look. It was as if he somehow got inside my head and decided he was going to illustrate how I felt when I read a certain part of the book. Because every single thing he came up with, I was absolutely overjoyed about. The cover, the inside of the book, every single illustration, to me, was giving me a hope that when the book finally came out, it was going to meet its market. It was going to find those individuals who would be so enthralled by it that they'll want to look at it and read it over and over again. It's because of repetitive readings that children and adults begin to process the message of the book. And when the illustrations of the book make that repetitive reading inviting, as I think David's illustrations do, they make it very inviting. They make looking at the book very rewarding. It ends up being the experience that I always hope for. But the collaboration between David and I and the museum on this and the creation of the book was virtually seamless, because David and I were exactly on the same page about how this book was going to come into existence. And he did a splendid job with it. I'm eternally grateful to him for it.
Wow, that's amazing to know. I think it really goes to show your talent as a writer and getting those feelings across in words, and then David's talent as an artist to visualize it, because it is a very warm book, words and pictures together. Does anybody else have any questions?
I see a Mary Smith with a hand up.
All right.
I'm slow on the technology. She goes much faster. I have a quick question. What advice would you guys both give to the aspiring author and illustrator?
I like the way you point there. I can give advice on the author. David will step in and give advice on the illustrator. And the advice I would give about being an author is very close to what it takes to be an illustrator. And my first advice is to say that writers write. If you're not writing, you can't call yourself a writer. It's like you can sit around and dream about playing basketball, but if you're not playing basketball, you're not a basketball player. So if you want to be a writer, you actually have to sit down and write every day. It's a type of thought muscle that you have to strengthen and build to get it to do what you want to. The second thing, as important, is you have to understand what a writer works with. A writer doesn't work with thoughts. Thoughts come to us. A writer works with words. That's what we use to get the thoughts in our head onto a piece of paper, onto a screen for you to look at. So I look at words the way I look at crayons, the way I look at markers, or the way I look at paints. If I give you a box of crayons and it only has 3 colors in it, how exciting of a picture can you draw for me versus if I gave you a box of crayons with 140 colors in it? And so to me, the more colors you have to do a drawing or a painting, the more incredible the artwork can be, the more the details you can present in the image, and the more rewarding that image will be for whoever is looking at it. So I look at words the way I look at colors, and I want to have as many colors in my mind as possible. I want to have as many words in my mind as possible. So read, really read as much of what you can, different types of things, because different genres and different types of books or articles will give you different ideas. What I did to show you just how I was as a child, because when I was 5 years old, I developed a fascination for words. I tell you the books that I read most. This may blow your mind. I used to read dictionaries. Look at the face, yeah. I was so fascinated by words that I wanted to find a book that had the most words in it. And the book that had the most words in it to me were dictionaries. I didn't need a story. I was just completely fascinated by words. And so I would constantly read words over and over again until I began to amass them in my mind, understand what they meant. And I started constructing thoughts on a level that I didn't even know I was capable of at the age that I was, because I had so many words in my mind to actually say what I wanted to say. And so when I started writing a lot, by the time I was 8 years old, I was already writing well beyond my education, well beyond my age range, because I had all these words in my mind that I was using. And to me, it was the same exact thing as if I sat down and started drawing on a piece of paper or crayons. That's how I felt about it. That's how I still feel about it. So I would tell you, as a writer, you have to write. If you're not writing, you're not a writer. And learn as many words as you can. The last thing I would tell you to do is getting a book published is not easy, because you can write the greatest thing in the world, and it can really be the greatest thing in the world, but you still got to have somebody else say it's the greatest thing in the world if they're going to publish it. And so if you're trying to get a book published and it gets rejected and somebody says no, do not take that personally. That is not a reflection of who you are. That has nothing to do with the value of who you are. It has nothing to do with how well you've written something. It has to do with whether or not the person who's reading it likes it and wants it. That's all it has to do with. So I'll give you a lesson my father gave me when I was a child. When I didn't make a baseball team and I was sitting in the basement crying about it, I was 8 years old. And he came to me and asked me why I was crying. And I said, I didn't make the team. And he said, that's not why you're crying. I was there. I was there. Coach told me to go home. I pretty much know why I was crying. He said, you're crying because you don't understand the law of averages. And I said, what? I'm 8 years old. What do I know about the law of averages? He said, the law of averages is this. Everything that happens in the world that you want, there's a yes or a no. There's the same amount of yeses in the world as there are no's. They have to balance. That's the average. He said, so the more no's you hear, the closer you are to a yes, because the yeses are there. You may have to go through some no's to get them, but the yeses are there. So if you get 15 no's and you stop, you never realize you have 16 yeses on their way. You have to keep going until you find that yes. So when you try to get something published, or when you try to do anything and you're met with rejection, do not take that personally. That's the fact that you have not gotten to the eyes and the mind of the yes that is waiting for your work, because there are people out there waiting for it. There are people out there who want it, and there are people out there who want to help you get it out there. So those are the 3 things I would tell you about being a writer. David can tell you what it takes to be an illustrator. So I'll leave that up to David.
Well, basically I draw all the time. I wake up with a pencil in my hand and my sketchbook is always nearby. and I'm constantly drawing ideas all the time and developing it. And just like a writer, you're going to hear the word no a lot, but every now and then somebody will realize that you have a lot of talent and they believe in you, and those are very special people. So listen to them when they come along, and listen and keep them as friends as long as you can, because it's a very fun world to make pictures every day, but also it's a very, very hard world realistically. Not everybody places value on art, but there are enough people there who do, and projects will come along, but you really kind of have to earn them. So again, to reiterate what Michael said, I always think of being an artist as training to be an Olympic athlete. You have to practice all the time. But you have to do something that's a little bit different from everybody else. That is what will make you stand out. A lot of people can draw things realistically and make it look like a photograph. The person who puts their own spin on something, who makes a choice that's different from what everyone else would do, is the kind of thing that will get attention, and people will notice it and say, this is different and this is really good and I like it. So keep thinking. I always say to young artists, think about what you can bring to the table. What is the contribution to a picture that only you would come up with? It has to be your solution.
That is an incredible piece of advice, because I think back to something I was told when I was a child, and that is be you, because there's only one you. Why try to be anyone else? So what David is speaking about is, how do you bring your individuality into your own creativity? And it's that individuality we need to see more of if we're ever to have a world whose view of people and whose view of humanity begins to expand, because more people are expressing their individuality, and everyone's individuality is a definition of what it means to be human. So that's a very important point that David makes, is how do you bring you into your artwork? And that's something I would strongly urge everyone to consider doing, because we need to see more of it.
Such a good point. And I'm very excited to see these budding authors and writers come up in our county. I will look for your name on the shelves soon. Yeah. Thank you again, Michael and David. I think those are all the questions and time we have for today. We really appreciate it. It was such a good time. I've learned so much just from you. And it's always a pleasure to hear authors read their own works, right? And how they interpret the words in their own voice. And so thank you again. Also sponsored by Beanstack. Thank you. I forgot to say, this was a recorded session, so it'll be on YouTube if anybody missed it. Link it to your friends if they didn't come in. Thank you again, and I hope everyone has a really great day. Have a good weekend.
Thank
All
you.
right.
We really
Thank
appreciate
you all.
it. Thanks a
All
lot.
right.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye
Thank
now.
you.
Hi! In the description below, you'll find a link to the community ebook submission form. Be part of the community and tell your story about the skin that you live in. This form will be open until June 7th, and once the book has been finalized, it will be free to the public. Don't forget to check it out. Like and subscribe. Thanks! Bye!